All right, good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Just very exciting to see so many folks calling in for this webinar today. My name is Katie Hawk, and I am with the Oklahoma Monarch Society, and we're very thankful to have you with us. I see a lot of familiar names. Some of these folks I don't recognize. So let's take a moment and do some shout outs. Find your chat button. Should be up there at the top in the screen somewhere. Find your chat button and tell me where you're at. Are you in Lexington? Are you in Purcell? Are you in Midwest City? Are you in Tahlequah? Tell me. We want to know where you are hiding out today. Where are you calling in from? So find that chat button. Let's see. We've got Ed J. Davis coming in from Edmond, Debbie in Tuttle. All right. We've got Maureen in Purcell. Hi, Maureen. We haven't seen you since last year. John and Franz in Mounds. Hey, Franz. Lots of OKC, fantastic. Edmund, Caitlin. Hey, Caitlin. Yes. Oh my goodness. There's so many wonderful people. There's more people joining us. Amber McIntyre is coming in the door. We know her. Yay, it's like opening the doors to a movie like screening or something. This is so much fun. Leah in Southwest OKC, thanks for joining us. If you're just joining us, please find your chat button and come join the party. Tell us where you're hanging out at. What city are you representing today? Annette from Tulsa, thanks for joining us. It helps us, it gets us hyped up and excited, get us all hyped up and see who else joining us here. It looks like Connie's coming through the door and Doug Hilbert. Fantastic. Find your chat button. Joe in Norman, let us know where you're hanging out at. Find your chat button. Leslie in Yukon. Hey, Leslie, thanks for joining us. All right, it's good to see the statewide representation of everybody coming in. Yeah, this is exciting. All right, well, fantastic. We have about 34 people with us right now. I suspect more folks will be rolling in the door as they can. But again, find that chat button. Let us know where you're representing from today. Debbie Moore in OKC. Good to see you, Miss Debbie. And we've got some more folks still rolling in. All right, so again, my name is Katie Hawk. I'm the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Monarch Society, and we are super pumped to share with you our experience through this webinar, Monarchs in Mexico. We have some very wonderful and special guests with us here today, and they're going to take time to answer questions for us and help us all understand what that experience was like. Give me one moment. I've got some more people to admit into the room. Hi, Lily P. All right, where's Lily coming in from? All right, so give me just one moment here. Let me get my notes up on my screen. All right, let's get this party started. Candace is joining us as well. Hello, Candace. Come on in. All right. My goodness, we just need an everybody walk through the door button. Okay. All right, so just to take a moment, we will have an open public Q&A session. Hi, Lily from Chicago, Lily Peppers. So if you don't know Lily, she's an old friend of pollinators here in Oklahoma, and she recently moved to Chicago and now works for Monarch Joint Venture, which is wonderful to have a fellow Okie up there representing at Monarch Joint Venture. So to all the folks that are just joining us, find the chat button. Let us know where you're representing from. It's good to see everybody here. Very exciting. So we're going to take just a quick moment and explain why we're here and what we are doing. So essentially, the Oklahoma Monarch Society, not too long ago, let me take one more. Sorry, I got excited and I skipped over something. That happens. Let me take a step backwards. Hey, Nancy from Ada, thanks for joining us. Essentially, what's happening here is we've got a lot of people still coming in the door, and I'm trying to manage that, and I'm so sorry, y'all. Okie dokie. So I got lost. I'm lost. Give me 1 minute. More people coming in. Okie dokie. So the Q&A process, we've got some questions already that we're going to ask our panelists, and I'm going to host us through the process and ask these questions. And that's not going to take up the whole hour. The rest of the time will be filled by you all. You all will have the opportunity to ask questions and get answers. There is a Q&A button. So if you could please find the Q&A button on your screen, familiarize yourself with it. The questions that we will entertain today are the questions that are in that queue and have the most likes. So that way we don't get multiples of the same question. Instead, somebody may have already asked your question. You can go in and like it because you are interested in hearing the answer to that question as well. So that's where we will ask our questions when we get to about 15 minutes remaining for the webinar, okay? In the meantime, the chat button is just for casual. Let us know where you're checking in from. We got Amy from Edmond and Nancy from Ada who just joined us. Thank you all for joining us today. This is very exciting. Again, I'm Katie Hawk with the Oklahoma Monarch Society. Let's see here. Last fall, the Oklahoma Monarch Society and its new board members. So one thing to take note of, our nonprofit is only 1 year old. We're 1 year and 2 months old. We're babies. And so we developed a new board. And one of the first things the board wanted to do was coordinate a trip to go see the Monarchs in Mexico. I'll try not to cry right now because it is pretty special. And we wanted to have that experience. Of course, let's develop this really unique bond, but then also an opportunity for us to get to learn together side by side and have this in-depth and magical experience. Letting some more people in, give me one moment. Okay, so with that in mind, one of our partners, a very close partner of ours, which is the Oklahoma City Zoo, they reached out and they offered to, oh, Tom Kreider is joining us. Give me one moment. And Rebecca Pryor. The Oklahoma City Zoo reached out and offered for us to be able to utilize their third-party vendor called Rewild Safaris. And so they offered to coordinate the trip for us, which was even more fantastic. So that opened up the door for the Oklahoma City Zoo and their friends to join us as well, which is how we got News 9 to come and join us. The Oklahoma City did all of that. Fantastic. All right, next slide, please. So you can see that we packed up our bags and we did our own migration, although we don't have wings. So we went via airplane, some man-made wings, and we made our way down south to Mexico City. After reaching Mexico City, we took multiple modes of transportation. You name it, we pretty much did it. From airplane to horseback, lots of pickup truck rides, and then even boat and bus. So there was a lot of different modes of transportation that we took. Oh yeah, go back one slide there for me, Miss Stephanie. Sorry about that. So Stephanie Leland is in the background doing our behind the scenes production, and we're grateful for her. Thank you, Stephanie. We did a lot of hiking. If we can go to the hiking slide, we did lots of hiking. Lots and lots of hiking to get to these places. They were in remote communities up in the mountains of the Oyamel fir forest in central Mexico. So there were a lot of very remote areas for us to get to. We went to 3 different monarch butterfly sanctuaries. If you can go to that map, please. And you can see here, so we flew into Mexico City, that's the star on the right. And then we made our way to these 3 sanctuaries you can see on the left there, each of those little red dots. It may not look like much from this map, but it was a lot of transporting. Just a lot. We spent a lot of time on charter buses, and then of course a lot of hiking and the boating and the trucks or not the boating. I'm sorry, the horses and the buses and the trucks. The boat was not part of the trip to see the Mexicos. It was a day excursion to go and learn about some local culture and a community. So that's what the boat is all about. I just thought it was a very nice, colorful visual, and it's part of the story. So why not include it? All right, so let's take a moment right quick. We're going to hide our slideshow. Oh, and before we do that, one quick thing. You'll see the list of the 3 sanctuaries that we went to visit: Villa Allende, Sierra Chincua, and El Rosario. Those are the 3 different monarch butterfly reserves that we went to visit there in Mexico. All right, so now what we're going to do is take a minute and meet our panelists. If we can hide the slideshow right quick, I'm going to go grab a few more folks from the lobby and let them come join this party. Come on in, everybody. All right. So you should be able to see on your screen here our 4 guests today. We have Dr. Emily Guest. If you could wave your hand to us, Dr. Guest. She's a conservation scientist at the Oklahoma City Zoo and Botanical Garden. Thank you for joining us, Emily. We also have Dr. Patrick Bell. If you could raise your hand for us, sir. He is one of our are board members for the Monarch Society, and that title just doesn't do him justice. He has carried the torch for pollinator conservation in our great state for over a decade, and we're very grateful for all of your continued efforts. Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick.
Thank you.
And then we also have Von Seal Harmon, if you know Von Seal. Yes. Von Seal does a little bit of everything, but she's best known for her researcher specialist role in the Monarch program and is the Monarch program lead for the Oklahoma Department of Transportation Natural Resources Program. We've said that one a few times, so we got it down. It is a mouthful, but we are grateful for you to join us today, Von Seal. Thank you so much. And then last but not least, we have Colby Thielen. Colby is an anchor reporter. You might recognize his face. You've seen him a few times on channel KWTV News Channel 9. Thank you, Colby, for joining us, not only today, but for the trip to Mexico as well. We look forward to hearing from each of you. All right, so we are going to we're going to start the Q&A panel. It's officially 10 after. There's not anyone else. We got one more in the lobby. Casey's going to come join us. All right, looks like we've got the lobby empty now and everybody is here. Just as a reminder for those who have just joined us, feel free to chat in where you're visiting from today. Adrian from Norman, thanks for joining us. Amy from Edmond. It's good to see where everybody's representing from. And then also familiarize yourself with that Q&A button up at the top. Q&A button is what we will use for our public Q&A session towards the end of this webinar. And you'll be able to type in your question, and then you are also able to go and like other people's questions. So just remember, the questions with the most votes at the end are the ones that will get asked. So that's an important tool. Even if you don't ask a question, you can still participate. Okay? All right, well, we're going to get this party started. This should be an easy one, but maybe it's not, you all. Why on earth did you choose to go on this trip to Mexico to see the Monarchs? Who wants to start us out?
I'll start.
All right, Kobe.
I don't know if choose is the right word. I was very privileged to get the opportunity to. We were approached by the zoo and said we have this opportunity to travel and see not only where the migration ends, but to meet and kind of interact with all the people that are working to preserve the species, both here and there. It was a trip that News 9 went on back in 2019, and it was an opportunity we saw as a chance to look at where are things at 6 years ago, where are things at today, and to kind of revisit that story. I know coming off of last year, it was kind of a scary time for the population, very low. And so it was a chance to examine and see what it's like today. So they came to me and said, hey, would you mind going in like a month? And I said, are you kidding? Absolutely. So it's been great. I can't wait to share all the stuff that we saw there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Colby. Let's see here. Emily, you want to share out why you chose to go on this trip?
Yeah, so Oklahoma City Zoo was hosting the trip, and so I had the opportunity to be able to go and see monarchs, and I've been studying monarchs for 10 years, so it was just a wonderful opportunity to be able to go see them.
Wonderful. Von Seal.
Well, for the last probably 9 years in my work and also in my leisure time, I've been creating gardens for monarchs, whether it's on the rights of way or in city parks or at schools. And so it's always been kind of like, my focus is enhancing native plantings that can help preserve the eastern monarch population migration. So the opportunity to see what my colleagues at ODOT or at Oklahoma Monarch Pollinator Collaborative or native nurseries, these passionate people who've been promoting monarch conservation for so long. And then to go to my favorite country with this group of conservationists and naturalists and scientists, it was a no-brainer. You would have not been able to keep me from going on this journey with you guys.
Love it. Fantastic. I totally understand that sentiment. Dr. Bell.
So this has been a bucket list item for me well, Emily, you said you've been studying these for 10 years. It's been on my bucket list for probably twice that long. But it was a combination of multiple things. And then as the zoo made this opportunity available to the Oklahoma Monarch Society and Oklahoma Monarchs and Pollinator Collaborative, it was like finally the time has come, and my bucket list seems to be getting longer and the bucket gets smaller. So I'm thinking that, yeah, this was the time to do it.
Fantastic. So glad you were able to join. All right, so we're going to move on. Maybe our questions will progressively get more difficult. We'll see. All right, our next question for you all is, or it's really, yeah, to describe describe your experience seeing the monarchs roosting for the first time. So while I know we've seen them here, but we're specifically in Mexico, I want you to describe your experience of seeing them roosting for the first time when we finally made it to that moment, the first sanctuary that we went to. We had to hike in all the way back down. We had to go through that little ravine thing. And then we finally got there. Who wants to start us off with that one?
So we're used to, in Oklahoma, seeing monarchs flitting about, rarely in one place for more than a few moments in time. And to be able to be outdoors in such a pristine environment, it was cool. It was vigorous exercise getting to some of these places, but at that final moment when you come around the curve in the trail or mound the top of the hill and you see these thousands upon possibly millions of monarchs just literally hanging out together, and they've been there for months. It was exhilarating. It was just one of those life moments that you carry with you for the rest of your days.
Thank you for sharing. That sounds absolutely lovely. I do want to check in with the general public right quick to our attendees. We were trying to share some photos simultaneously while Dr. Bell was sharing his story, and I'm curious if you all can see them or not. I personally am not seeing them. This is one of the difficulties in doing these virtual events. Sometimes there's these technical difficulties. So I do, if someone could chat in, I got one. Maureen, thank you. She's not able to see them. If we could get a reshare on our pics, that would be fantabulous, Miss Stephanie. Thank you. I'm seeing something happen. Here we go. All right, fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Bell, for sharing that. Let's see here. Colby, you want to share your experience for seeing them for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. It was it may be different for me. I think in our sort of what we were there to do and is capture those moments of you guys seeing them. So you almost turn the corner and you're so focused on, okay, we need to get this shot, we need to get this sound, we need to get this and this and this, that I was almost like taken aback. I didn't even almost see them. That's how focused you are. But for me, the moment that kind of just made me stop and just sit back was right when the sun came out. And as the sun hit the trees for the first time there at the very first reserve, and the butterflies just what our guy would call an explosion. They all just start to warm up and leave the tree all at once. It was one of those moments where you're just like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. It's just absolutely incredible. And it kind of takes you out of that, oh, I need to work, I need to gather, I need to get this, I need to get that, and just step back and just say the beauty of this in this moment. It was quite, I didn't know what to expect, really. I'd heard about it from other people that had been and seen this before, and you can kind of describe it, but until you see it, it really is something that you just don't know what to expect. As I think for me in that moment, you can probably see it right here in the video. This is a moment like that where the sun hits the trees and they all just scatter and are flying around you, and it's kind of surreal. It kind of takes you aback for a second. It was really cool.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I bet, you were busy working, during that. We're all in tourist mode and you're over here like working.
Stressed that I'm not going to get the right shot at the right time.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, Emily, you want to share out how what that moment was like for you the first time you saw the monarchs roosting?
Yeah, it was, I kind of echo the others that it was really surreal. Like I said, I'd been studying them for 10 years and I had seen, all of from finding them in the field as eggs and caterpillars, raising them as monarchs for research or doing tagging events with them. I had never really seen this last piece of that puzzle where they roost and they survive for the overwintering generation. And so, we were walking down and it was, a pretty arduous hike, and you get there and you just see them all clustered together. It was kind of a moment where I was taken back, where I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is the final piece of this puzzle that I've been studying for all these years. So I got very emotional,
Yeah.
but it was really beautiful to see it. And then I put back on my science lenses and was like, oh, look at how the behavior is different by these roosts and what these butterflies are doing. So it was a really magical experience.
Fantastic. All right. Let's see. Von Seal, have you shared out on this question?
I have not. And Katie, you said it early, it's like I was trying to decide if I should jump in first so that if I was going to get emotional, then I'd be over it. But then I have to listen to everybody, and so then it makes me emotional as well. Yeah, I've had such a privilege to work in the natural world and work with so many species. And so I think going in, I was a little cavalier. And well, I didn't know y'all had that picture. So I was a little cavalier. I was like, oh yeah, I've worked in reserves and I've done this. So I was a little cavalier about, walking in. And I have friends that I know what to expect. But you walk into like millions of animals literally dripping from these towering fir trees. And the wings are just, the sound is like rustling in waves at you. Um, and then you see like the cold monarchs they're on the forest floor, and there's nothing that takes your breath away or fills you. It filled my spirit with power of what the natural world is all about. And seeing these monarchs roost for the first time, there's nothing like it. And I've got to see some fantastic things in my life, but that was, yeah, that was different.
Whew, you almost made me cry. Give me the feels and the chills. Fantastic. Yes, Steph says, bring the emotions. Love it. It was very emotional. And I think, I know I'm not a panelist, but I will add one little thing to this convo. After all the years of doing work for this species, and yes, we see them here, but to see them in such large numbers, it was so impactful. And just like, it was hard for it to not be emotional. I know a lot of us who work in this field that we made this choice for a reason, because we're very passionate about nature. And so, to have that experience, it was emotional. Larissa and I hugged and cried and cried and hugged. It was magic. All right, let's move on to the next question. Tell us something new that you learned about monarchs on this trip. Something new you learned about monarchs on this trip. Who wants to start us out?
I'll start because I'm probably the one that knows the least or knew the least for sure. So I'm going to start by saying everything. Everything I learned about monarchs on this trip was new to me. For the most part, the extent of my knowledge was, well, I know they migrate through here. Sometimes, we're able to pick them up on our satellite imagery. You can see them migrating from space, but I didn't know much about really anything. And so it was all kind of a new experience to me. I just thought I found it so fascinating that I still have so many questions like the fact that they are able to multi-generations find the same place just instinctually, I found so fascinating. The way that they are, on the ground there fluttering to get their wings warm, and just little things like that, and how they know to come back to these same reserves. I still just can't get over that. But the migration process in general, that's why this trip was so great for us, is because we're there, to observe and sit back and kind of let you guys be the story. But I'm also learning through you, and it was such a privilege to be with so many knowledgeable people that have studied this for years, have dedicated their lives to this in so many ways. Those are the people you want to really learn from and hear from. And so for me, it was just like every little aspect, I feel like, was something new that I was learning, which kind of, was overwhelming at times, information overload, but in a good way.
So I bet that was a lot like drinking from the fire hose, Colby, for you.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
What an immersive experience as a media person. Wow. Totally cool. I do see that we have a few chats in the or excuse me, questions in the screen or questions in the chat. And we will get to those after we do this initial Q&A session. We will have a public Q&A portion of this webinar. Colby, thank you for sharing. Let's move on to the next person. Who wants to share something new that they learned about monarchs on this trip? You don't have any, or did you not learn anything new? Dr. Bell?
It was a reappointment to my way of thinking how remarkable this insect is. We've talked about the travel of all the way from Mexico to Oklahoma, Texas and Oklahoma in the spring, and then the travel again in the fall from Canada to Mexico. But the resiliency of these monarchs, I mean, we're talking now, they have a population of only this essentially a couple of postage stamps size, but yet they're still trying. They're doing everything they can. And if anything, the trip highlighted for me, they're doing everything they can to survive. It's important for us to do everything we can to help them.
I don't know if I have anything else to say after that. Wow. That was pretty moving there, Patrick. Excuse me. Thelma was moved as well. Whew. All right. Let's see, Emily or Von Seal, did either of you want to share out on this topic? Or maybe Von Seal, you already did? No, wait. Yes. No. Y'all gonna have to raise your hands or let me know.
Sure, mine won't be as poetic as Patrick's, but from a scientific perspective, I thought was really interesting was seeing how the behavior at each roost was a little different. So at one roost, they would be covering the trunks all the way up to the tops of the trees. At another roost, they would be up higher on the trees. Some would be in the middle. And then just how when the sun did come out and they moved and they shifted around, there was a lot of differences between the colonies, which didn't even realize was going to happen. So I thought that was really interesting to learn about.
Thank you for sharing, Emily. Yeah, that was very interesting for sure. And Von Seal, did you share out on this question or did you have anything to contribute?
I didn't, but yeah, I agree with Emily. That was not quite what I was expecting, was to see how they use the roost and the trees differently and the different calipers. And one of the things that and actually I saw that question in the chat. We had one of the researcher guides that was with us, Siddhartha. He talked about like 10 years ago. He would stand in the middle of these reserves and the ground would be just covered. Yeah, he's there. He's there on the left side with the black shirt on. He was talking about the ground would just be covered under the trees with monarch bodies, and it was just as far as you could look. And one of the questions I saw was, what is the significance of them being on the ground? And so what happens with these clusters, they will fall, or the wind will blow them, or they get wet, or they'll drop, and so they get on the ground and they try to warm themselves back up. And we had some of them crawling towards our feet in one of the first reserves it was kind of cool and damp and cloudy. And so we saw this, and we saw some of the little clusters of the ones that did not quite survive the fall. But when Siddhartha talked about it, he talked about this, just acres of wings on the ground. And when I think about the health of these forests, which we know are compromised by logging, slash and burn agriculture, that was one of the things the guides and researchers told us, that this is still continuing. But as the dwindling numbers of monarchs are not there to be on the floor of the forest to provide nutrients, that also is detrimental when you think about the whole cycle of migration. That is part of the cycle of migration. And so it is really important for us to consider that we've got to keep the numbers up, not just for the population, but also for the health of the forest that provides for this population. And that haunted me. Siddhartha's telling of that story, it haunted me for most of the trip.
Wow. Yeah, and we saw small little piles, and that haunted me. So I can't imagine having heard that story. Thank you for sharing, Von Seal. So Von Seal, while I've got you on deck here, do want to ask a question specifically to you. How did this trip, and maybe this is partly what you just got into, this may be connected, but how did the trip to Mexico change or impact the way you view the work that you're doing now?
Well, my job is transportation. And our our agency's core mission is for the safety of the traveling public. But the mission can also encompass the traveling monarch. The migration is such an amazing story. Our Monarch team, our ODOT and Monarch team, we have kind of like an unofficial motto. It's like what's good for one is good for all. And so when we think about creating habitat along the highway corridors, we have that in our mind. And that's those of us who are, whether it's the ODOT maintenance technician or the backyard gardener, the passionate volunteers and naturalists, and the scientists, Emily. We all have influence on whether these animals continue to make the incredible journey and how safe that journey can be for them. And so it just reiterated what the privilege it is for me to get to do this work.
That's fantastic. It was a privilege for us to get to share the trip with you, and it's a privilege for us to get to have you working for our Department of Transportation. We're lucky ones.
Okay, no fair. Now there's going to be like cry.
Okay. I'm going to pass the baton. Let's see here. Colby or Emily or Patrick, would any of you like to share with you how the trip to Mexico is changing or impacting the way you view your work here in Oklahoma that you're doing now? Colby?
Sure.
Oh, go ahead, Emily. Go ahead.
So as part of my job is I work with the public a lot when it comes to monarchs, either looking at gardens and working with teachers who are making monarch gardens, helping coordinate tagging and monarch tagging efforts in the fall. So this was just a really great opportunity to be able to bring some of that back to my teachers and to the volunteers that help me every year. So I can say, oh yeah, actually I was able to see what a tagged monarch looked like in Mexico. This is how much effort it takes to find one of these. So I'm going to be able to bring that back to it, which is really awesome.
Fantastic. Love it. Get to share it out. All right, Colby or Patrick, you don't have to, but if you'd like to add.
I think it helped me realize, the work that we do is local news, right? It's focused on Oklahoma City, central Oklahoma. But I've been reminded just time and again, this trip and others like it, that Oklahoma's impact on other parts of the world is immense. And whether that's partnerships through groups here, or just the fact that what happens in Oklahoma oftentimes affects other populations everywhere else, and sort of being able to tell those stories and showing Oklahoma how their impact here is also impacting other cultures, other people. We were talking about the with the locals there, the spiritual side of it, the cultural side of these monarchs, how they've been coming since as long as people can remember, and how it really connects with very sacred holidays for them. And the fact that what we're doing here impacts what they're doing there, and how people here in Oklahoma can learn about their impact, I think is an important part of this job that not many reporters get the opportunity to do. And I feel very blessed to get to have that opportunity to kind of show outside of our borders or outside of our viewing area how our impact even here is making a difference somewhere else. So it's a very cool opportunity, and it puts things into perspective for me.
I bet. Totally different approach. Coming, not having your background being in conservation and biology, you have a completely different lens about this. That was pretty neat. Thank you for sharing, Colby. And Patrick, did this change anything for you?
Insightful. We have a tendency to be somewhat myopic in that we're looking at what's in front of us and dealing with the issues. What plant do I plant? What should be in my garden? What should my community be doing? Or occasionally, what can we do as a statewide organization? But this added the international component to the thought process. I mean, it's in the back of our minds always. We know of the migration to and fro, but we have a tendency to think about what's in our own backyard. And this opens, at least in my mind, and hopefully in the mind of all those that will be viewing the seminar or this webinar, it's an international thing that we need to think about. How does this impact the monarch population in Mexico and the citizens in Mexico that are doing a stellar job in trying to preserve this migration and the species?
Wow, fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. It sure did. It opened up some new channels for communication for us with locals there, new relationships, and having that bigger understanding of how actions, it's kind of like actions upstream affect everyone downstream. And then, how can we help you? So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Patrick. All right, Miss Emily, I'm going to put you in the spotlight right quick. What was it like getting to actually speaking of scientists, getting to meet the scientists doing the work there? Was there any crossover or connections that you made in your work during this experience?
Yeah, so it was really inspiring. It's always great to meet someone who has the same viewpoint as you and that's committed to the science and trying to conserve the species. So just to meet other people who are doing the same thing in a different place is really inspiring. And there's just instant connections there. And then as far as connections to the work I do a lot with tagging, as I mentioned. And one of the things is every year when I'm helping volunteers and I'm training them to tag monarchs, we're aiming to tag a few hundred to a few thousand monarchs. And everybody's always like, well, how many are going to get recovered? And now I know how hard it is to find those tagged monarchs. It's, a tiny little sticker that's on one wing of one butterfly that's in a group of millions. So it can be very difficult to find it. And so that was nice to have that perspective on it. After tagging for so many years, I now know how much effort goes into it on the other side of trying to re-find those tags. Oh, Katie, I think you're muted.
I bet you were wondering what all my movements were over here. I was saying that I bet their necks hurt from all the having to look up to find these tags, right? So they're using binoculars. Is that correct?
It's a bit of both. So they check all the ones on the ground they're dead and they're flipping them over. And then I think they're also looking on the outskirts to see, but it just takes just hours and hours to try to find these tags again. So, and I think the recovery rate is 1 per 100 tags, which to me seems really, really good now that I've been there and I see how many monarchs are clustered together. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a really good rate. But yeah.
And for anyone interested in learning more about tagging, visit monarchwatch.org. We'll drop a link here in the bio. But while we were there, one of the scientists did mention that they had only recovered 4 tags this year, and that was very low for them, if I'm not mistaken, Emily. Is that correct?
It was just at the one colony we were at. So they'd found them in other places, and those should be released. The domestic recoveries, so the ones that are found in northern Mexico through the US. So if your tagged monarch was found in Texas, those will be released by the end of April. And then the ones found at the colonies will be released by the end of May. So.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. Okay. Well, we're going to pass the baton on. Would anyone else like to share out what that was like for you to meet the scientists and determine? And did you learn if there was any crossover or connection in your work? Bonsil, would you like to contribute on this one?
Well, unfortunately, because of the language barrier, I didn't get to speak as much as I wanted to the researcher guides. So we made a deal that we were both going to practice Spanish and English so that next time we could speak a little bit better. Yeah, it was it. I know in talking with them, it's so different to think, we're doing our protection, you know, in an environment, where things are a little more managed, especially in the first reserve, which is a much younger reserve, not as manicured. It's still kind of wild. In fact, I think at the end of our visit, because we were up there so long, as I remember, the federales, the police, came up the mountain to make sure that we were okay. So it was young and it was wild and it was and just the forest was not as managed as the other reserves. Um, but yeah, they're doing their work in some tough situations, and they don't know sometimes if they're going to come across. They talked a lot about the small logging roads that they have found, in the backsides of the reserve. So so we don't have that problem as we don't have that problem when we're doing our work here in the States. But it takes a kind of dedication when you know that you're working in an area that may be a little dangerous, or you're working and you persist. And that's what my takeaway was. They don't make a lot of money. Some of them are volunteers. Some of them have to do double duty as guides and as researchers. Um, but still, they are there to protect the forest.
Yeah, on that note, Tom Kreider, one of our friends and volunteers, while we're on that note, was inquiring if we observed any logging activities near the preserves. I personally did not see any. Did any of you all see any?
Mm.
No. Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share out on that, Colby or Patrick, in regards to meeting the scientists?
There was, and the beauty of a small group like this is that you never know where the conversation is going to go or when it's going to start or finish. We were having dinner one night with one of actually the lady, the female scientist that was the tour director guide. And they have great interest, both the adults as well as the children, in these indigenous communities around these reserves, that the school-age children are just immersed with butterflies, but yet they don't have a lot of knowledge about what happens in North America, in the United States. And there was a very strong interest on her part, as you can see on the screen. She's the lady in the yellow vest. Um, a strong interest in opening communication between their fourth grade, fifth graders in Mexico, in these local indigenous communities, and maybe some of the fourth and fifth graders in Oklahoma. And it opened up an entire dialogue that there may be some fruition through partnership with the Oklahoma City Zoo and the Oklahoma Monarch Society. I mean, there's a lot of work going into it, or it's being talked about, but just the opportunity to engage. And it's vitally important that we engage these young people, these fourth graders and fifth graders. They're going to be the scientists that are going to be carrying on the work in the next generation. And we have to impart the importance of this, not only in Mexico, but obviously clearly important in our country as well.
Super. Thank you, Patrick. That was very, very touching. And Patrick, while I have you on the line here, you've been doing monarch conservation maybe for the longest of everybody here on the panel. And so I'm just curious, what kept you from going in the past on this trip? Why didn't you take this trip beforehand? Just out of curiosity. And the reason I'm asking this is because I want others to hear your answer and to feel inspired to possibly create a trip of their own, or go take one of these trips.
Oh, it was a happenstance and life events and circumstances. I recently retired, and in doing so, that opened up a window that I previously didn't have. And I also, for those of you that were on the trip, I have a 13, well, now 14-year-old grandson that has been doing monarch conservation with me since he was a toddler, essentially. I have pictures of him as a 2-year-old with monarchs hanging on his finger. And so he's always excited about monarch conservation. There's always a pot of milkweed growing at their house, and almost every year they have eggs and caterpillars. So this was a year that I had the time, and he was old enough that it may be a once in a lifetime event for both of us. I don't know whether, depending on the efforts that we have, if they're successful and we can convince the decision makers that it's worthwhile to do this in full earnest, then perhaps we can preserve the species. But this was the time to do it. And probably one of the greatest joys I got from this was just seeing how touched he was with it. And to this day, he still talks of it. So yeah, it was a wait for several reasons, but it was the time to do it.
Well, we greatly enjoyed having your grandson on the trip. He was a delight, and he just brought a whole new level of curiosity and energy that was just really made it real special. Thank you
Yeah.
for bringing him. Hey, Colby, I got a question for you, buddy.
Okay.
All right, so you may have already hit on some of this earlier when you shared out, but ultimately, we're looking to learn more about like why did you go on this trip, and what are you hoping to achieve, and what are you doing with the information you gathered?
Yeah, boy, that is the great question. There's a lot to go through. We were able to get a lot of great footage, and we're working to put that together now. The reason, the idea, our Lacey Lowry, one of my co-anchors, came down, as I mentioned before, in 2019, and the opportunity came up again, and they said, I think it's time to do the update. It's time to bring this back to the forefront, but give it a little bit more time. So. There's still some details to be worked out. Our hope is that we're going to be able to do a half-hour special with all the information we were able to get. And really, our goal is to hear from you guys. So many of you were kind enough to talk with us and kind of just share your insight and your experience. And we're hoping to bring that to people. Our photographer, Daryl Van Ostran, is incredibly talented, and he has a very unenviable job of trying to take people there. Because as talented as he is, sometimes you're like, until you see it with your own eyes, it can be hard to describe. I think he did a wonderful job. I was looking through some of his footage. It looks really incredible. So our hope is to not only take people there that haven't gotten that opportunity, but to also show people here why it matters. And that's really our hope. And what really struck me, especially with being there, and our last day, Monarch landed on Daryl, and so we got the chance to get some really up close pictures with it. And it's just something so small and so fragile that makes the trip hundreds and thousands of miles. And I guess what struck me, and I think is part of what we want to incorporate in our story, is the resilience. And it really, I think Patrick talked about it earlier, just the resilience of a population as well. Not only is it an incredibly resilient insect to be able to travel so far and to go so many miles, but the population itself is resilient. And I think that the work of those that are hoping to preserve the species has been resilient as well. And so I don't want to give away all of what the story is going to be about. You'll have to wait and see, date TBD. But we really kind of want to let those who know and have a story to tell to be able to share that and show why it matters to folks that live here, and really, as we talked about, what people can do to help. Even small things like planting milkweed, or even if you live in an apartment, there are ways that you can help out. So we're going to show the kind of the story from many different angles, many different groups, and different ways people can get involved. So that's as specific as I can be right now, but more to come.
So, but we should all be tuning in around this fall at some point-ish.
Right now, it's looking late summer, early fall, but we'll certainly
Okay.
be blasting that out whenever we have a date locked down.
Roger that. And we will echo your blast. So everybody who's following
Yeah.
us, follow News 9, follow the zoo, follow us. You're going to hear it one way or another, and hopefully you don't miss a beat. And of course, they have lots of cameras in those newsrooms, so they'll record it and post it for future playback as well. So
Absolutely.
All right, well, fantastic. We have about 11 minutes remaining. We are going to move into the public portion of our Q&A. For those that are listening, thanks again for joining us. We do hope that you will take a moment and type up a question for our panelists to answer. Notice that there is a Q&A button up at the top. Give us a question in there. We do have a comment. I'm not sure if it's a question, but it looks like Jamie M. texted in that the albino monarchs, that was interesting. I wasn't present for that discussion. If anybody wants to share out in regards to the albino monarchs while other people type in their questions in the Q&A button for us.
Yeah, so there is a recessive gene in monarchs, so they don't produce orange pigment, and so they're just white monarchs. There's a small group of them in Hawaii that are kind of famous for just being there. But one of the things one of the guides told us was that the prevalence of white monarchs has been increasing, and that's because the population has been getting smaller. So more recessive genes have been coming to the forefront. And so that was one of the interesting tidbits that came out of watching the monarchs decline over time. It appears that we're having more white monarchs appear now. So.
Interesting. Thank you, Emily, for addressing that. And then also Lynn asked, what are the monarchs feeding on while they're in Mexico? If so, on sap or what?
Well, Emily can certainly address this one as the scientist, but this gets back to what are we doing in Oklahoma? They've got to have their nectar sources here. And think of it as this is their Thanksgiving feast. They store up body fat and then go to Mexico. And for 4 to 6 months, they are in a very almost hibernation type mode, using very few calories. But what they're using primarily is from the nectar plants that are growing in Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah, so they get most of their nectar when they're moving through. When we were there and it gets sunny, they will come down for a drink of water, or they'll be puddling on some of the ground to pull up nutrients. There are flowers that some of them would land on. So there's some salvias, sages, and paintbrushes, different species than what we have in Oklahoma. But they weren't using those to as much as you'd think, because most of them were just kind of stretching their wings and then flying back to sit back on the roost.
It's kind of like a whole weekend, in bed, just resting. You get up for some food or, a drink and then you go back. Well, fantastic, Emily. Thanks for sharing out on that. I don't see any questions and answers coming in through. Oh, there's another one. Annette just sent one in. Let's see here. How do we get more and more people to become as totally obsessed with monarchs as I am? So Annette is obsessed just like we are. This is like our entire mission and goal in life, Annette. I will, I'm going to open this up to the panelists, but I will say having friends like Colby, from the media, having friends of media to help spread the word is a really good start as well. And I'll also add that supporting conservation supports our efforts to get more people obsessed with monarchs like you and I are. So you can support our efforts through donating, of course, or sporting a monarch license plate. But lots of outreach and education really is what the bulk of our work is: outreach and education, going to events, having conversations with the municipalities, going to lots of meetings, opening people's eyes and ears and up to the possibilities and opportunities within conservation practices. Learning about how they can save time and money as well, other resources when they practice these conservation methods. But a lot of it is education and outreach. And I would just ask our panelists if anyone else wants to expand upon that. How to get people obsessed on them and get them on the monarch train. Any of the other panelists want to add anything?
I just have a question. You mean there are people out there that are not on the Monarch train? I am shocked. Yeah, but it is, I'm so glad you asked that question, and I'm so glad that so many people joined in. Oklahoma is so blessed that we are like, we also call it, this is the heart of the migration, whether it's monarchs or whether it's our migrating birds. I-35 is a migration corridor that has been used for thousands of years, whether you had a highway or not. And so it is celebrate the migration. We have an opportunity in spring and fall, and monarchs are coming, our migrating birds are coming. They're all coming at the same time. And so it's like, let people know about the migration. Um, get outside, and see if you can find those monarchs that are coming through. And they're coming. There's Medill last weekend. There was a monarch that was seen. I believe it was laying eggs. I'd have to go look at the report, but there's also like Journey North and many of those websites where you can track the migration. So I would just recommend get yourself involved with migration because we get to do it twice.
Yay! It is. We're very fortunate like that. We get to do the migration twice. That's right. It's kind of the changing of the seasons. It's the sign that we're going into spring, or it's the sign that we're going into fall. They represent so much. Okay, let me come back here to the chat or to the Q&A and see what else we've got in here. All right, Martin Lopez. I find that it can be difficult to get native milkweed plants. Are tropical milkweeds as good for them as the native varieties? Would anyone on this call like to address Martin's inquiry about tropical versus native milkweed?
Sure, I can talk about it. So in Oklahoma, we have freezes, and so our plants, if you plant a tropical milkweed, which is not native to Oklahoma, it's just going to die, and it's not going to be a perennial that regularly comes back. It might survive maybe one winter if we have a mild one, but generally it's not a plant adapted for Oklahoma. So it's not going to be as big a problem as it is for Florida and portions of Texas, where some research that's been coming out suggests that it could be increasing the prevalence of a protozoan spore that can make them sick. So what we always suggest, though, is to plant native plants that are adapted to Oklahoma, because once they get established, they're able to withstand our pretty crazy weather that we have here. And it's just kind of the better source than to go towards tropical milkweed. But monarchs do love tropical milkweed, so I know why people like to plant it. If at all possible, you should always try to plant native milkweed species. And we have over 20 species in Oklahoma, so there's quite a variety of them before you should jump to tropical milkweed.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing that. And Martin, you'll also see in the chat here that we added a couple links. One is where to buy milkweed. So we do a statewide listing of all the places that you can buy native milkweed here in Oklahoma. And then also you'll see on in the chat a link to what to plant. So this has a variety of lists, including regional plant lists. So if you're in Eastern, Western, or Central Oklahoma, there is a regional plant list for you that includes what types of milkweed are best for your region, as well as the early, mid, and late blooming wildflowers. So yeah, great question. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, you bet. You bet. All right, I'm going to go check our little question section one more area. And I'm not seeing necessarily anything, but I did see a couple things in the chat I want to come back to. Looks like we may have addressed most of these inquiries. Do you know which of the three preserves might have been the principal source of this increase? Recent reports seem to indicate that the wintering population numbers. Okay, so Tom brings up a good point. So I'm going to drop one more link also in our chat here. For those that are not aware, the survey, there is an annual survey done each year on the population of the monarchs, okay? And that's a big moment that the folks obsessed with monarchs are waiting for every year. Like, it was later this year than normal. So we were on pins and needles for the majority of the month of March and February, excuse me, month of February. So the link I'm going to drop in does go to our news page, and there's a few, the second one down you'll see does discuss the recent increase, the survey data showing that there was an increase in the monarch population, as much as twice as much as last year's numbers. Now, keep in mind, last year's numbers were very, very low. If you go to that story, you will see a chart that shows the decline over the last 2 decades. So that will give you a visual for what those population numbers are. And so what Tom was inquiring about is he's wondering if we knew which of the three preserves might have been the principal source of the increase. Emily, would you by chance or Von Seal know anything about that?
So when they measure it, they measure them all and they add them together, but they don't ever really release each preserves, one independently, and then the preserves, the colonies also can kind of split apart and merge back together as they're starting to shift out of the forest when they're starting their migration away. So it can also be kind of hard to know which colony is this piece, if it had kind of broken off from another one and joined another one during this shifting as they're leaving. So it's pretty hard to say which colony did the best this year, just because of the way that the roosts shift and move themselves down the mountainside on their way back. But generally, I would just say I think it's kind of collective across all of them that they've all kind of increased some rather than one carrying the weight of them all.
Thank you, Emily. On that note, you brought up resilience earlier, specific to the monarch population. And while we were there, one of my most holy wow moments was when one of the scientists showed us a photo on his phone of a frozen monarch that was covered in ice. Like there was literally icicles on this monarch butterfly. And I'm wondering if you might, I'm not qualified to discuss what was going on in that picture, but I do know that the monarch lived, that apparently this was a happening. And I'm curious, Emily, if you might be able to take a moment and just kind of share out with the group what that was all about and how that, obviously connects to resilience, and share more about that situation.
Yeah, so most insects can survive brief freezes. There's pictures of caterpillars chewing on milkweed when there's some snow on it. It's just because their anatomy, they're able to, you can kind of think of it having a little bit of antifreeze in their blood. They're able to withstand these low temperatures. And we went in February, but earlier in winter, it's a lot colder at the tops. And so they get freezes, they get frost, they sometimes have ice. And so these are animals that are adapted to withstand just one quick freeze or one quick frost as long as it thaws out. And so in this case, it was kind of like being put in the refrigerator and just kind of going even more dormant. And then it warmed up enough it was able to survive. If they stay in that frozen state for a really long time, they're not going to, I think if they're in there for over 48 hours, they won't survive. But yeah, they can withstand some of these quick freezes, which is always a surprise to me when I think about butterflies.
Yeah, for sure. They're so delicate. So the fact that it can be frozen and still live is quite frankly amazing. It's a miracle. We did have a couple of more questions here. Maureen, I believe she's in Purcell. She was asking if we'll be repeating this trip annually. So this was a trip that was coordinated by the Oklahoma City Zoo. There's a link here, okczoos.com/travel. I've heard rumors that they may do this trip again next year. So I don't have any guarantee. That is up to the zoo. And so, but you do know that if they're going to do it, we will definitely be promoting it. So we're hopeful that they do. It's a lot of work that goes into these trips. I want to make a plug right quick for the importance of ecotourism in these areas. Ecotourism that is sustainably operated, obviously. And so the tourism supports the communities and helps for them to be able to continue protecting the forest. They're doing everything from fundraising to build fire breaks to just trying to provide clean water for their community. So I strongly recommend and encourage folks, if it's something you want to do, that it's a good place to spend your money because it goes back into helping to protect these places that the majority of their protectors, their guardians, are literally the people who live in the homes at the base of the mountain. Okay, so ecotourism is very important. I hope that the zoo will have another one of these trips next year. I do know that Monarch Joint Venture also coordinates an annual trip as well. And we do hope that this tradition can continue for Oklahomans to go and have this experience. Thank you, Maureen. So stay tuned to the Oklahoma City Zoo, and we will definitely be promoting if they do another trip, okay? And then Annette also asked if she can have a copy of one of the photos. Annette, looks like the one in the email from Amanda Fitzgerald. We will put you in connection with Amanda Fitzgerald, Annette, okay? I'll reach out and find you in our list of registrants. So at this point, it looks like we are going to wrap up. I do want to just reiterate one more time the importance of supporting conservation. If you don't already have a Monarch license plate, it's a fantastic way to help fuel our wings and keep our mission going and alive. The Monarch license plate literally supports the team power, the man-woman power that we have behind at the Oklahoma Monarch Society, getting out to the events. Stephanie Jordan, Stephanie Leland, and myself yourself. $20 from your annual renewal goes directly to our bank account and helps support the work that we are doing. And then in addition to that, as we generate more funding, that will go towards more projects. And we're very hopeful to get the word out to every Oklahoman. We greatly appreciate you taking time to join us. And if you do want to take time to send a donation in as well at okiesformonarchs.org, we still have a few more of those Monarch Kaleidoscope bandanas available, $100 or more, and I will personally mail you a Monarch Kaleidoscope bandana. And thank you, everyone. It was so great to see the representation statewide. We had over 60 people on the call, over 100 registered. Greatly appreciate you. Really, 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 the opportunity the gratitude is overflowing for this opportunity to get to share with everyone. And just a big thank you to our panelists, Emily, Colby, Von Seal, Patrick. Thank you for taking time. Thank you for sharing your photos. And obviously, thank you for joining us for the experience. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to wrap up this webinar. We did record it, so we will post it for future playback. So again, thank you to our panelists. Y'all are amazing. Stephanie Leland, thank you for operating our slides. And with that, we're done. Thank you all.